When you consider organizing an APA paper, we get to use headings. Formally, they're called levels of heading, so if you hear me say headings or level of heading, know that those are synonymous. But in APA, being concise and direct is important as opposed to other writing styles like maybe MLA, where the flow of the paper is dictated by what you're actually writing. In APA, we like to use levels of heading because it directs the reader, it creates a flow, and you can organize topics where the reader could look at your paper, find all the headings, which are handily all bolded, and almost look at an outline of the paper. Some short writing assignments won't make use of a lot of levels of heading, but some longer writing assignments will use a lot of levels of heading, up to maybe 5 levels of heading. Generally, though, as an undergraduate, I'd be surprised if we went more than 3 levels of heading. I think in a very long document, like for research methods, it might get up to 4, depending on how you choose to format several things. But generally, it's 1, 2, or 3 levels of heading. Some terminology that we need to cover are things like title case, where all the words are capitalized in a title or a heading. But if I'm being precise, it's actually not all the words, it's all what are called important words somehow. So we capitalize all the important words, especially the first and last words, regardless of what they are. Um, but we don't capitalize a, and the, and short prepositions like to, on, for example. Be careful though, because some prepositions also function as conjunctions and you'll need to capitalize those. For example, the word but can be a preposition. Um, so if I said, but for me, I will go myself, something like that. Technically it's a preposition. But if we use but as a conjunction, like I'd like to go, but I'd like to go by myself, that would be an example of a conjunction and it gets capitalized. So there's a little bit of wiggle room in there for the rules. Generally though, if you have a short preposition, don't capitalize it, you'll be okay. Only nerdy people are going to get too bent out of shape about what you capitalize or don't capitalize in terms of prepositions. If you're going to err on the side of caution, maybe just capitalize all prepositions, and I don't think anybody's going to yell at you for that. If they do, just say that you use it as an adverb and walk away quickly, and nobody will be the wiser because they're not going to argue with you about parts of speech. So there you go. Um, and then there's a sentence case where you use typical sentence capitalization rules, where you capitalize the first word in a sentence, any proper nouns, and that's pretty much it. The only difference is that in sentence case, if whatever you're writing has a colon in it or another hard stop, like if there's a title of a book, for example, that has a hard stop like a period, a colon, exclamation mark, uh, question mark, any of those, then the next word after those punctuation marks get capitalized regardless of what they are as well. So there's a little bit of a variance in and things like colons, where you would expect not to see a capitalized letter afterwards, but in sentence case we do see that. So in short, in sentence case, use normal sentence capitalization rules where you do the first word and a proper noun, and if you have a hard stop, then capitalize the next letter after that. Okay. Um, in APA 7th edition, we don't use sentence case for levels of heading, but we do use it for other things, so it is worth distinguishing those two things here. So in headings, we're not going to use it. In other ways, we will. Okay then, so the structure of headings looks kind of like what it is on this slide. So this slide, believe it or not, has 5 levels of heading on it. You have a level 1 heading, and these are formatted according to what they would look like on a paper. The font's not the same, but that's okay. You can change the font to one of the acceptable fonts that we have in APA. I prefer Times New Roman, but this is just using the theme of the PowerPoint slide, so there we go. So the level 1 heading is the highest level of heading, and this would be for a main section in a paper. So the level 1 heading gets title case, so every important word here is capitalized, and then it's center aligned. And then if you had a subsection then you would have level 2 heading, and level 2 heading has title case as well, and there's no punctuation after it, and then the text that happens after level 2 heading goes on a new line here. Okay. By the way, if you add text after the level 1 heading, it would also go on a new line, but this is just distinguishing a left-aligned heading with no indent with the text that continues on the new line with an indent like a regular paragraph would have. And then if you have a section under this one that relates to it, you would have a level 3 heading. The difference between level 2 and 3 is that the level 3 heading is italicized. That indicates that it is a subsection of level 2. And then the text continues on a new line as well. Now for level 4 and level 5 headings, we indent the title, the heading, and then the text begins on the same line. You notice that there's punctuation after the heading as well. So we have a level 4 heading, which is indented and bold but not italicized, period. Then the text continues on the same line. You can remember that the text continues on the same line because the level 4 heading has a period as if it is a sentence in that paragraph. And then the text continues as if it is a continuation of that paragraph. If you have a subsection of section 4, of level 4, good gravy, then that gets italicized with the period and text continues on the same line. Generally, it is frowned upon to have more than 5 levels of heading. What that suggests probably is that you need to organize your writing a little bit better. So that's all you have to say about that. So this is what the formatting would look like, just kind of as an outline. Okay, so something to mention too is that we don't use the heading called introduction in a paper in APA. That's not a heading that we use because it is assumed that the first part of a paper in APA is introductory. Okay, so if you have a long paper, you don't use introduction. However, if you're doing a short assignment that's maybe a page or two, then your first level of heading can be whatever the first topic is. That's completely fine, but you don't need to write introduction if it's an introduction paragraph. Okay, the levels of heading don't need to be equal in each section. So if you had a level 1 heading and then you had 2 level 2 headings under that, if you go to your next section, which would be like another level 1 heading, you wouldn't have to have 2 level 2 headings to balance it. Right? That's kind of like a stylistic thing that APA, or excuse me, the MLA, I think, likes to see, is that if you have an outline, then it's completely balanced because that suggests that you're balancing your writing. APA doesn't necessarily care about balanced writing as long as it's concise and flows and makes sense. Okay. You use your levels of heading as necessary. 3 is usually the most that you need to use in undergraduate writing, but it is feasible to use more than that. Probably not more than 5 though. So if we want to think about how we use levels of heading in terms of writing, let's take a writing prompt that you might see in a course. And this writing prompt is taken from Counseling and Psychotherapy, which has consistent writing prompts throughout. And in black is the writing prompt. So it says, for this assignment, do the following things in a response of adequate length. The first part of the prompt is to provide an assessment, provide an assessment of your general feeling about the efficacy of the session. That is, do you like the therapeutic approach? The next writing prompt is listen, explain how the session followed the therapeutic process for this at therapy. And then writing prompt number 3 is identify and explain how at least 3 therapeutic techniques and procedures were used. Okay, and then it gives a little bit more instruction about rooting it in APA and attaching it as a Word document, etc., etc. So if I thought to myself, well, geez, how would I organize this writing? I see that there are 3 writing prompts. 1, 2, 3. The first 2 writing prompts seem to have just 1 issue each, but the third one appears to have a writing prompt that wants 3 therapeutic techniques and procedures. So there might be a subsection thing going on here. All right, so let's take a look and see what that might look like if I were to map that appropriately. Okay, so my writing prompt would look like this. I would have efficacy of the session, and then the response goes underneath that. The adherence to the therapeutic process would be my level of heading, and then my response to that would go under that. And then my therapeutic techniques, because there were 3 of them, I would have a main heading called therapeutic techniques for that third point, and then I would have a heading for each of those techniques that I would include there, and then my response would go underneath. Again, no need to have subheadings under those because I have completed the writing prompt. So you can leverage those headings to structure your writing so that you know that you're addressing everything and you're practicing APA, and it makes your instructors happy, which may or may not be the most important part of all this. I've also included here a sample outline of what an APA structured headings might look like. And this is right from the APA manual, so you'll recognize this if you use your manual. But you have the level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 headings, and it shows kind of what the outline of a quantitative research paper might look like, where you have a method and you have the results and a discussion, and you'd also have a result, or excuse me, a references section later on too. But again, this is just outlining the levels of heading that you would see in APA. There is also access to a sample paper from the APA manual. If you wanted to follow that link, you can find that link in the actual PowerPoint presentation for this video presentation. But you can also find it in the APA manual, so you can search on that. Or you can Google APA manual sample paper with annotations, and you can find it there. There's also more stuff on that website if you go there. If this is part of the critical thinking and psychology class, you can find that document in the same folder as this video. So that pretty much wraps up what we wanted to talk about here. If you have questions, you can always reach out to your instructor. If you need additional clarity, you can consult the APA manual, and that'll give you more clarity on using headings. But I think that after having seen this, you are on the right track to writing well-organized papers that leverage APA headings.